just want to start with what you said earlier. You said there's a democracy deficit. Could you expand on that a bit?
So at the moment, you have a YouGov poll last year which said that 68% of the British public want energy to come back under public control, so in favour of renationalisation. You've got over 72% of the population who also want renewable energy. Now, that's not reflected in government policy. What we're seeing instead is the big six energy companies seconding people into the Department for Energy and Climate Change and influencing, effectively writing our energy policy in their own interests. So, you've got a government that is embarking on licensing 60% of the country for fracking. Nobody voted for that. Nobody was asked if they actually wanted that or not. We also have an environment minister who wants to tear up, or an ex-environment minister who wants to tear up the Climate Change Act. We've got a government that doesn't take climate change seriously, whereas actually most people in this country do take it seriously. We were heavily affected by flooding. That is a consequence of changing temperatures. We're probably going to see a lot more of that, and people are understandably very concerned. So what people in this country want, which is safe, clean, affordable, renewable energy, isn't really being delivered by the government.
You mentioned a poll about people, a majority of people against fracking, but it seems there's so many polls coming in months at a time. Sometimes you hear people aren't supporting fracking, and after a few months they say, well, people have changed their minds and now they're in favour of fracking.
I mean, if you look at the global picture, fracking is banned in several countries in Europe. It's also being banned in various states across the United States of America. Denton in Texas yesterday voted to ban fracking, and Denton is the birthplace of fracking. So the tide is turning against it. If you look at this country, there are over 150 local anti-fracking community groups where licenses have been proposed. So everywhere this industry wants to try and take hold, there is public opposition. We've been organising direct action camps in Balcombe, then later in Blackpool, and we've had many direct actions and protests, and we've had really big public support when we've been doing that. So what we've encountered on the ground is that most people don't think we need this. What they are concerned about is bills. They want cheap energy bills. They want a secure climate for their children. Fracking isn't going to deliver that.
But shouldn't we give it a go? It could be maybe done in a safe way. Should we not give it that opportunity?
Even if it was done in a safe way, it's still a fossil fuel. It's going to reinvigorate a carbon-intensive fossil fuel industry. It's going to generate more extraction at a time where the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has said we need to leave most of all known fossil fuels in the ground. We can't exploit them, we can't burn them, or we'll burn the planet. And also, even the chairman of Quadrilla, Francis Egan, even George Osborne, the Chancellor, have said that shale gas in the UK will not have a material effect on bills. It's not going to bring bills down. So on both of those counts, it's a non-starter.
Why are you so much against fracking?
Because I care about human life. I want to see equality. I want to see what we can call the commons, which means that things are not subject to market forces. They're not subject to profiteering motivations of a few companies and a few elites. I want to see equality, and I think that climate change and the energy industry as we see it is going to drastically increase inequality, as it has done already all over the world. So I'm looking at this fundamentally from a human rights perspective, and I know and I see climate change as a social relationship, as a social issue. This is not about polar bears floating on a bit of ice in the Arctic. It's not about, these ideas of just, simple kind of conservation or saving the rainforest. Yes, we need to do that. This is about people's lives and livelihoods and equality. So that's why I'm here.
Surely fossil fuel generation, people have said it needs to go down. We need more renewable energy. Wouldn't you say it's a bit too difficult to just have our energy source fully reliable on renewable energy?
I would agree with that, which is why we also need a huge drive towards insulation, energy conservation, a complete rethink in how we use our energy and for what purposes. Look at trade. We shouldn't be shipping so much. We shouldn't be importing so much from overseas. what can we do that's homegrown? How can we save energy both in trade, both in our domestic sphere, both with a really fully functioning, fit-for-purpose public transportation system. So, of course, we need to really look at how we're using energy as well as how we shift towards renewable as well.
Earlier, I heard Chris Faulkner, he mentioned that there have been sensational headlines about fracking. We've had loads of people opposing fracking, but he says there's a lot of people who says fracking is bad, but they don't know why it is bad.
Interesting that Chris Faulkner talks about sensationalism when the Advertising Standards Agency ruled this August that his advert in the Telegraph newspaper was basically misleading the British public and exaggerating, effectively sensationalising claims that we're going to run out of gas, that fracking is the answer to all of our problems. You know, that's sensationalist, that's evangelical. I think Chris Faulkner is actually deeply misguided and a bit too excited about an industry that in this country doesn't exist, when we do have an industry, the renewables industry, that does exist, and we should be putting our money there. But what you're hearing from the fracking industry, unsurprisingly, is that we should be going for fracking. So I think a lot of people do know what fracking is. They're very concerned about it. The more people hear about it, the more worried they get. And if you look at the geological conditions in this country, the economic conditions in this country, it's just, there's no guarantee that it can work, which is one of the reasons actually that there hasn't been that much investment in this industry in the UK. Investors are still hedging their bets, and I would say that the prognosis for this country is that it's a really unstable, unsafe investment environment, both from a governmental political point of view, where we're probably going to see a UKIP Conservative coalition, which will then be out after 18 months because it's just not going to last, it's not going to hold up, and also the movement that I'm part of, the environmental direct action movement that managed to beat coal and the third runway, and then also, of course, community opposition, that there isn't a social license to operate for this industry. However hard they try and bribe, however sweet talking they try and come across, people don't want it. What people do want is control over their energy, cheaper bills, and a safe climate for themselves and their children and generations to come. We know definitively that fracking can't answer that.
So what do you think the UK's energy mix should look like in the future?
Well, there have been studies done, both by the Tyndall Centre, both by through the Zero Carbon Britain report that the Centre for Alternative Technology has also put together, that it is possible with huge reductions in energy use, with energy conservation, with a complete rethink of how we treat energy and how our economy is run, to bring about a zero carbon emissions scenario for this country. It will take huge political will, it will mean changes, it will mean restructuring the energy industry, but that's got to happen if we're to avert catastrophic climate change. And I'll remind you that the IPCC has said that if we do go for fracking, shale gas, we will be heading towards catastrophic climate change. Now, I don't know what part of that Chris Faulkner doesn't understand, or that the fracking industry can't seem to understand. There's no jobs on a dead planet. There's no business on a dead planet. Seems to be a no-brainer to me.
So we've got the next general election coming up. What do you expect from the government in terms of energy policy?
I expect very little from this government because they don't believe climate change is happening. They're in bed with the big six energy companies. They're busy attacking the poor, the disabled, the unemployed. I mean, I think we're experiencing a horrific human rights crisis, and they also want us to opt out of the Human Rights Act. What do I expect from this government? Nothing but repression and theft. What I expect from a decent government that would respect and represent the wishes of its population would be taking climate change seriously, embarking on a big social and economic program to avert climate change, to create a national climate service to support people who are struggling, to alleviate poverty, to really support homegrown industry, farming, as much self-sufficiency for people, both in terms of energy and food and localized production as possible, and for a really strong environmental and human rights culture to emerge, which is really cooperative and brings out the very best in people. That's what I would like to see. I don't think there's a party that's really serious about that.